To be honest, I didn't want to record this video, but it's just so eerily out of touch and honestly destitute of any type of morality that I have to show you guys and analyze this speech made by Biden, because it's like it's out of 1984. Every single thing they are guilty of, they accuse their opposition of. If you're not a part of their cult, you're a bad person. Actually, you're not even a person as far as they're concerned. And they call themselves good people while doing it. You know, at least, you know, the Germans in 1942 had the wherewithal to hide what they were doing because they knew it was evil. The left is doing evil while calling themselves good.
My fellow Americans, I'm speaking to you tonight from behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office. In this sacred space,
With sacred space which he has desecrated.
Surrounded by portraits of extraordinary American presidents. Thomas Jefferson wrote the immortal words that guide this nation. George Washington showed us presidents are not kings.
Trying to allege that Trump thinks he's a king, whereas Biden has taken the most amount of executive orders and has tried to persecute his opposition. And every single thing that they do and say, though, is not meant to be related to reality, because the expectation to be on the left is that you reject reality in favor of the ideology.
Abraham Lincoln
was a Republican.
Who implored us to reject malice.
Malice. You literally persecute your opposition, calling him a threat to democracy, calling him the modern-day Hitler. And then on top of that rhetoric, Trump almost gets assassinated, and then you don't turn down the rhetoric, you increase it. The rhetoric coming from the left has been violent and psychopathic. There's no other way of putting it. And I've made videos about that. A video that I made that got a couple thousand views was exposing Destiny, a popular leftist streamer, as well as Mark Hamill, for just their complete and utter psychopathy. But that is widespread because the left actually rejects objective moral frameworks, proclaiming themselves good people with no evidence.
Inspired us to reject fear.
Reject fear? All the left peddles is fear. Literally what he's doing right now is peddling fear. He's saying, I have to drop out to protect democracy because our opposition is a threat to democracy. People who vote for him are a threat to democracy.
I revere this office, but I love my country more. It's been the honor of my life to...
He was forced to step aside. He didn't do this voluntarily.
...serve as your president. But in the defense of democracy, which is at stake, I think it's more important than any title.
The left is doing everything they can to be a threat to democracy. If you look at a map of what states allow voting without voter ID, like 16 states don't require any form of identification to vote. And this is after the left let in 16 million illegal immigrants, which is more than the population of 12 different states combined. This is after they've politically persecuted Trump with witch hunt after witch hunt, with trying to siphon resources away from him just because he's successful and an embodiment of their ideological failure. This is after their rhetoric was so dehumanizing and disconnected from reality that somebody tried to conduct an assassination. They are guilty of everything that they accuse the opposition of.
I draw strength and I find joy in working for the American people.
See, they don't think that any person who disagrees with them is an American person.
But this sacred task of perfecting our union, it's not about me.
Perfecting union. The country's in shambles. Notice how every single thing they say is an anti-truth. It's not just a lie, it's the opposite of the truth. This is who the left has become. I predicted this. I predicted this would happen as the election draws closer. I fully suspect the left to be saying 2 + 2 = 17 by the time the election comes.
But you, your families, your futures, it's about we the people.
We the people. Except we the people aren't anyone who votes for Trump, because he's leaving to quote-unquote protect democracy, meaning that the opposition, according to him, is a threat to democracy, meaning any person who votes for him is also a threat to democracy. When the left says the people, they only consider anyone who agrees with them to be a person, because if you're not a part of their ideology, you're instantly labeled and demonized. Your person status is taken away. This is what happened before atrocities in history.
We can never forget that, and I never have.
This is so eerie. This is so 1984.
I've made it clear that I believe America's at
They're probably going to try to make compassion camps. You know what I mean? Camps of inclusivity to protect democracy.
Inflection point. One of those rare moments in history when the decisions we make now will determine our fate of our nation and the world for decades to come.
Right, exactly. If the radical feminist degenerate psyche loses and is crushed and obliterated by objective reality and accountability, masculinity and authority, that will dictate the country's direction for decades to come. The left worships at the altar of anti-truth, and any person takes on an individual identity, uses logic, rationality, and reason instead of ideological adherence to an inverted intersectionalist hierarchy of victimhood, is labeled a bad person.
America's going to have to choose between moving forward or backward.
America's going to have to choose between democracy and our opposition. Think of the insanity of that statement.
Between hope and hate.
Everything they do is demonizing Trump. Everything they do. Endless slander. Literally nonstop 24/7 hate and slander coming from the left for the last 8 years. Everything they say is an anti-truth.
Between unity and division.
Bro, this is nuts. Their rhetoric is dehumanizing to any person who's not on the left. Notice how they feel emboldened to say the opposite of the truth because their ideology tells them that objective reality is oppression.
We have to decide, do we still believe in honesty, decency, respect?
It's like it's from 1984.
Freedom, justice, and democracy.
Yikes.
Agree with, not as enemies, but as fellow Americans. Can we do that?
He's actually talking about character. They have no shame. They literally have no shame. They worship at the altar of anti-truth.
I believe I know the answer to these questions because I know you, the American people. And I know this. We are a great nation because we are good people. When you elected me to this office,
He's been talking about only the people who voted for him. Anyone else is not an American. They're not even a person.
Promised to always level with you, to tell you the truth. The truth.
Biden tells the truth, guys.
Sacred cause of this country is larger than any one of us. And those of us who cherish that cause cherish it so much. A cause of American democracy itself.
Democracy itself. Cherry the cause of democracy.
Must unite to protect it. You know, in recent weeks, it's become clear to me that I need to unite my party in this critical endeavor. I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future, all merited a second term. But nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy.
Dude, they're so psychopathic. They're so psychopathic to say that if you don't vote for them, you're against democracy. How did the left get to this point? This was orchestrated. This was planned. Okay, the anti-reality frameworks of Marxism have been training people's minds for a long time to get to this point where they can totally reject reality so that they can look at 1 + 1 and say that equals 25. It's gotten to the point where they can say, if you don't vote for us, you're against democracy. To any thinking brain worth its salt, a statement like that only belongs on some sort of twisted sitcom parroting a dystopia. But to the left, it's like, oh yes, of course, if they're not with us, you're against democracy. Lock our opponent in jail. Men can become women. The vaccines definitely aren't causing any problems at all. No, this is who they are. I talked about this in a previous video recently, where I explained why this indoctrination has been deliberate. They're going to have to ask people to totally deny their reasoning faculties and totally deny their eyes.
That includes personal ambition. So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. It's the best way to unite our nation. You know, there is
the best way to unite the nation is through Kamala Harris. Yeah, true. She's so uniting, bro. Oh my gosh, when I just look at that face, I just see unity. Oh my god.
Time and a place for long years of experience.
Intersectionalist victimhood determines virtue. Aha!
In public life. There's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices. Yes, younger voices.
Oh yeah, they're coming. Believe me, and I'm not going anywhere.
And that time and place is now. Over the next 6 months, I'll be focused on doing my job as president. That means I'll continue to lower costs for hardworking families.
Continue to? Prices have gone up in every category. Inflation is at a record high. This is madness, dude. This is madness. Groceries have never been more expensive. Continue to lower. See, again, they don't expect their constituents to adhere to reality or hold them to the standard of truth, because truth is oppression. Truth is masculinity. Truth is predatory. The only thing that matters to them is adherence to the cult.
I'll keep defending our personal freedoms and our civil rights.
You can't make this up. Open border, attacks on guns, government colluding with big tech to censor people, literally confirmed with objective proof. The brains have been conditioned to accept the anti-truth, though.
From the right to vote to the right to choose.
The right to vote. Illegal aliens literally do not have the right to vote. That literally doesn't exist. It is illegal in all states for them to do that.
I'll keep calling out hate and extremism. Make it clear that...
Right. If you criticize them, if you were to say you're wrong because actually it's not legal for illegal aliens to vote, then you're called an extremist. Oh, you're an extremist if you don't agree with us. You're against democracy. This type of psychopathology only has one solution, and it must be corrected because accountability is the only answer. The way you deal with a psychopath is not to convince them. It's to show them the consequences of being a psychopath so that they keep themselves in check. Because you can't fix a psychopath. Millions of leftist brains have been ravaged and permanently destroyed by the anti-reality ethos of that ideology. But we can hold them accountable. We can enforce consequences. Just like you'd enforce consequences against a psychopath.
There is no place in America for political violence or any violence ever, period. I'm going to keep speaking out to protect our kids from gun violence. Our planet from climate crisis is the existential threat. This is critical to our democracy. Supreme Court reform.
Supreme Court reform, right? Reform. We have to pack the court, right? Because any person that disagrees with us is radical. Any person that disagrees with us is a threat to democracy. The Supreme Court, as it disagrees with us, is, oh my gosh, it's untenable. They can't debate ideas. It's the reason they do this. And the reason they can't do this is because they reject the notion of meritocracy, because meritocracy references an individual identity and objective better and worse parameters that you can distinguish between. That's unacceptable to postmodern neo-Marxism, which is their ideology.
To ensure America remains strong, secure, and the leader of the free world. I'm the first president in this century to report to the American people that the United States is not at war anywhere in the world.
What? We literally are sending ordnance to Ukraine as we speak. We may not be in a hot war, if that's what he means, but war is raging on the planet right now, and it's because of America's weak stature, our weak leadership. Many wars have been started under Joe Biden. What a completely eerie sight this is.
We're still to the worst pandemic in the century, the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression.
Wow, it's so psychopathic. They orchestrated all of this.
The worst
it's so psychopathic.
Attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
They're psychopaths. Yeah, the only way to deal with this psychopathic behavior is to hold them accountable with consequences. Because you can't debate people that don't believe in reason. You can't debate people that say coherence itself is masculine oppression. The only way to deal with that is to enforce consequences. That is what it's come to. And I'm going to keep repeating this until the election because this is true. This is how you deal with psychopathic behavior. And they meet the definition of psychopath, if not psychopath squared.
We came together as Americans. We got through it.
Only the people who voted for Biden, he's referring to as we there again.
We emerged strong.
The psychopathic freak women that only buy cat food.
I'd like to thank our great Vice President Kamala Harris. She's experienced, she's tough, she's capable.
At putting people in jail for weed offenses.
She's been an incredible partner to me and a leader for our country. Now the choice is up to you, the American people. When you make that choice, remember the words of Benjamin Franklin hanging on my wall here in the Oval Office, alongside the busts of Dr. King and Rosa Parks and Cesar Chavez.
Remember when the left opposed Martin Luther King because they were in favor of Jim Crow? The Democrats were the party of Jim Crow. And Martin Luther King was a Republican, and then they assassinated him. And then after his I had a dream moment, they pushed nothing but racial division, insisting that skin color is what determines virtue instead of content of character. But see, those distinctions reference objective reality. What I just did is oppression. That's unacceptable. That was masculine and patriarchal. How untenable of me.
When Ben Franklin was asked, as he emerged from the...
some sort of metaphor for how Trump is another threat to democracy, let me guess. 5 million on A.
The convention going on, whether the founders have given America a monarchy or republic.
It was A. Ding, ding, ding. I got it right.
Franklin's response was a republic. Whether we keep our republic is now in your hands.
If you don't vote for me, you're voting against the republic, is the message of the left after performing one of the most heinous jobs the country has literally ever seen in its entire history. But on top of that, not just doing a bad job, but saying they're doing a good job at the same time, while saying the opposite of the truth, while demonizing the opposition, while saying any person who disagrees with them is a bad person, who's not even a person. This is who the left is. This is the most eerie, satanic, reprehensible movement in American history. The cult of anti-truth is insane, but they're not going to win. Of course, they would equate masculine competency and emergent impressiveness via the meritocratic hierarchies as a king or ruler, because then they can say that it's predatory and not based in competence, which is exactly what they do when they demonize masculinity and label it as toxic, is they say that mechanism of selecting for competence and merit doesn't exist. There's only power disparities. They don't believe in meritocracy. This is the reason why their agenda is Marxist. Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto. Obviously, communism doesn't believe in meritocracy or capitalism, which is meritocracy. Everything about the left is fraudulent. We should be aware that, this is what preceded heinous tragic events in history. But in this case, if they make camps, they're not going to try to hide it. They're not going to admit that they're evil. They'll be called compassion camps. They'll be called inclusiveness camps. They'll be called compassion democracy retraining grounds, because they believe that they're better than you and they believe you're not human. If you understand what I've said, or you understand even a single thing I've said here, subscribe to the channel.